can audio tape it, please, also.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm... okay. Tov. Boker Tov, everybody. Malka? Oh, she'll come in the middle and tell us. Because today's shiur is dedicated in memory. Malka's yard site today. So today's shiur, her mother's yard site, yes. And she'll give us the name. And then we're going to get started. I just wanted, before we even start, just to mention, very rarely, like 99% of the time, this doesn't happen to me. When I'm about to give a shiur, I'm not nervous about it. It's like, I love teaching, I love speaking, but when you do something that's extremely personal, it's very different. Very different. And this is only the second time I've spoken about it publicly. The first time was this past Pesach. It was actually very strange. And then I'm also going to this Shabbat and speak in Hebrew for the ladies' shiur in the afternoon, do the same thing in Ivrit for those who are interested. So, I was wanting to be available. Okay, I guess we'll get started. I think that one of the first questions I want to answer is, why am I sharing this in the first place? Besides stam curiosity, people want to know, and I get asked the question all the time. I mean, constantly. I'm asked, wait, what are you, Ashkenazi or Sefaradi? When did you change? How can you do that? All these questions have been asked, and of course I guess did you have to have a bris again? Did you have to go to the mikveh? How does your family feel? The questions I've heard many, many times. And I wrote up an answer in a 2-part article a couple of years ago, and since then I've grown in a different way as well, and that's why I wanted to share that, but not just for that reason, but because I feel that there's a lot to be learned, which we'll discuss at the end, as to having gone through this process, not just the whys, but what is the result of it.
If I bring her in?
Please, of course.
Looks like she's
And
really
absolutely. And then please just mention your mother's name.
My mother was Chana
Bat Chaim. So she will be Ilu Nishmata, Yeshem Shem Ben Aliyah. Okay. So the what can be gained from hearing my story, I'll save for the end. So let's just start off. I'm going to start with a couple basic premises. Number one, generally speaking, you can't do what I did. You can't just change from Ashkenazi to Sefaradi. It doesn't work that way. So, the question is, why not? And how could I do it? So let's talk about the why not. There is a concept, for those of you who ever read Igeret Ramban, you know that he quotes in the very beginning a pasuk which says, Shema b'ni musar avicha, va'al titosh torat imecha. That you should listen to the musar of your father, and you should not put aside the Torah of your mother. What does that mean? So, without going into all the details of the meaning of that pasuk, the general idea is we learn from this pasuk you're not allowed to veer away from your family's Mesorah. Whatever your family tradition is, that's your tradition. Give you a couple of examples. Generally speaking, when a person... Hi, come on in. Sit down. Oh, it's okay, thanks. Generally speaking, when a person, for example, is Ashkenazi and the family minhag is to not eat kitniot on Pesach, and that's what the kids have to do. They can't eat kitniot in their next generation until they wake up and smell the coffee. Never mind. And, for example, also, the nusach hatfilah, the way a person davens, the way that the boy puts on his tefillin, various minhagim and customs, all that has to stay more or less in the same tradition as the prior generation. So, having said that, the question is, how could I make such this is truly a radical change. It's one thing, it's enough just to say I changed the way I daven. But this is a complete change besides that. We're going to see how it changed in stages. I'm going to first give you a little bit of background about me. Right, so for those of you who came in a couple minutes later, I said that this is kind of a difficult talk for me to give, only because it's very personal. I don't usually like talking about myself. So, okay. It's okay. I'll live, I hope. Born and bred in Chicago, Ashkenazi family, day school, yeshiva high school, normal, Baruch Hashem, normal upbringing. Everything in a Baruch Hashem, wonderful family, and very loving, very caring family. And we were always given a message about religion, which was not a pound you over the head message, but a very loving message of Hashem and family and all good things. A very healthy upbringing. I went to 2 years of Yeshivat Shalavim here in Israel after high school, which is where at that point I decided, I have to live here. It took me 40 years to get here, but that's it, or 35, but that's a different story. And I went back to Chicago. I learned for smicha, become a rabbi, but I never really had intention up front to become a rabbi of a shul. Just I wanted to have smicha. I wanted to learn. I wanted to be able to help people if I could. But I went into the business world. I worked in purchasing. I was director of purchasing for 2 companies that spanned 17 years. And the shul that I became rabbi in, which was the one I actually grew up in, I had my bar mitzvah there, I had my ufruf there, my wife Andy, who I've known since I'm 5, daven in the same shul. Her father, Shalom, used to sit right behind me in a different shul I used to daven as growing up as a kid. And we were very tied to the shul. And when the shul's rabbi went into retirement, he actually became rabbi emeritus, they went on a search for another rabbi. And I joined the search committee, and we chose somebody, and I was considering maybe, I said, it's probably not the greatest idea. We chose somebody, and for various reasons it didn't work out too well. And then they decided they're going to search again. And right around then, Rabbi Basil Herring, some of you may know the name, he was the executive director of the Rabbinical Council of America. He published a book called Rabbi as a Calling. I said, okay. So I read it. And I said, you know what? That really describes me. It's not like I was looking for something. I wanted to bring more meaning to my own life by bringing meaning to other people's lives. That's the general idea of the book. It's like in one sentence for a whole book. And I said, and it just happened to be right then when they were starting to search for a new rabbi. So I decided I'll put my hat in the ring with 2 caveats. Number 1, if for some reason I am not elected to be the Rav, still a shul I daven at, no harm. I understand perfectly. I have no experience as a shul rabbi. You all know me since I'm a kid, not all, but many of the members knew me since I was a kid. So, and the second one was I need to be treated the same way as everybody else, all the candidates. Meaning, you can't just say, okay, Zev Shanilov is one of the candidates, and we're going to interview all the others. I had to go through the whole process. I had to do a Shabbaton, I had to speak, I had to be an interview with the shul, an interview with the search committee. After 12 candidates, Baruch Hashem, it came down to 2, and the truth is that the other rabbi, who they had interviewed last before me, would have done very well as the rabbi of the shul. It would have been fine. But they chose me. And I remember going over to my parents' home after I was chosen. It was a rainy, pouring night. I ran over to their house. They lived 2 blocks away from me. And I said, yeah, I won. I'm Mazal Tov. Oh my God, now what? What am I supposed to do? I had no idea. I'd never had a shul rabbi before. We went from a shul that had a part-time rabbi, and in parentheses, there's no such thing as a part-time rabbi, just a part-time salary, and to a point where the shul was now taking on a full-time rabbi. And I had to define the job. I had to find what day I was going to do what, and what I was going to do. And it took probably 6 months to a year to really find my derech. And the reason I'm telling you this background instead of just starting at the beginning of this story is it's important to understand the next statement. I worked for 10 years. And the truth is it's not work. And I said this to many people that when I would go to the shul, I never said to Andy, I'm going to work. Not once. It was always I'm going to shul, I'm going to teach, I never said I'm going to work because I never look at it as work. So during those 10 years serving as a rabbi, you would think that my teaching and my speaking and my dealing with people would influence my spirituality. And it would make me a more spiritual individual. And if you think that, you'd be wrong. Because it didn't. I didn't consider myself as... Now, I'm saying the next thing with a very strong caveat. There's no such thing as someone who is not spiritual. Because we have a guf and a neshama. We have a body and we have a neshama. The neshama is the spiritual part of us and the guf is the physical part of us. So there's no such thing as not having a spiritual aspect. The question is tapping into it. I'm in the middle of reading a book by Rav Steinsaltz right now called Neshama, which is about tapping into your neshama and bringing it to fruition. People go through their whole lives and they have no connection to the neshama even though it's there. But I never really considered myself a spiritual individual. And my perspective was, for those of you who like Shakespeare, and specifically Macbeth, and I've quoted this line many times, which is, when it came to tefillah and other things, even though I was teaching it, my perspective was, when 'tis done, when 'twere done, then 'twere well, 'twere done quickly. Just do it, daven, and go home, right? And you need to learn, you finish. But there wasn't this burning inside of me whatsoever, and the connection to Hashem was okay. It was based, it was the average American connection a person has to Hashem, and I put that in quotes because there's no such thing as average. But I was definitely not considering myself in a visceral sense, or on a surface level, spiritual at all. And then something changed. A few years ago, when I first came here, one of the things I wanted to do was teach a class in Tefillah, specifically Tefillah class for women. I had spent 9 years or 10 years teaching it in the United States, and I wanted to do it here also. So I started a class which was going to be on a trial basis for 3 weeks, to start teaching a ladies' Tefillah class in my home. It led to teaching 4 other classes at the house also, which was too much. I cut back. But that Tefillah class lasted for about 5 years instead of 3 weeks. Wow. During those 5 years, and I'm going to go back now, we're in 2018, I'm going back to 2012 now, about 6 years ago, I formed a bond with some of the members in this class. And we started talking outside of class as well, 2 or 3 people. And I started to hear things and about things that I'd never really thought about before. In terms of, we say, V'avtat Hashem Elokecha, love God. Okay, it's a nice word, it's a nice phrase, but what does it mean? I sat one time, and I know I've mentioned this to some of you before, I sat one time in a lecture where a woman was speaking to a frum audience. And her opening statement was, "Hi, I'm so-and-so." It was the following statement: "Whom do you love?" So hands went up, my sister, my brother, my parents, my children. Not one said God. Not one. Not that they didn't, but it didn't click. It didn't come into the head right away. God. I mean, it did pop into my head. I don't know if I said anything back then or not. But that wouldn't necessarily be the first thing that would pop into my head, which is sad. And so I'm hearing from these friends about the love of God, hearing about connection and talking about spirituality. I'm thinking either, waiter, I'll have what they're drinking, or maybe it's something I should start looking into. And this part of the story I'm making a little bit shorter is I was introduced to Rabbi Nachman Breslov, not personally, obviously, he's kind of dead. Sort of, I guess. And I started reading some of his writings, and more specifically that of Rav Arush, from Chut Shel Chesed, translated either I was reading the original Hebrew, but some of you I know have it also in the English, by Rabbi Eliezer Brody, the Garden of Emunah, Garden of Gratitude, and these other books, which, the one particular book in particular that really struck me, and I will say literally changed my life, was Bistei Ya'ar, in the Forest of the Fields, or the Fields of the Forest. I forgot which title it was called. And I started to follow something in there, started to do something that was in there. Forest of the Fields?
Yeah,
thank you.
Forest Fields.
Forest Fields.
In Forest Fields.
Right, it sounds like an actor now playing starring Forest Fields. Anyways, and I started to do something that he talked about. It was very weird at the beginning. It's called Hitbodedut. Hitbodedut, from the word levad, boded, alone. To spend time by myself. First of all, understand there's a very big difference between being alone and being lonely. Very big difference. I'm not talking about being lonely, I'm talking about being alone. And what does it mean? For about a year, I went to the park right over here before Tefillah. Tefillah here would start at 6:20 or 6:30, depending on the day of the week. And I would find myself outside about 5:30 in the morning, and the best was when it was dark still, sitting in the park. What was the purpose? So the whole idea of Hitbodedut, which itself is a shiur, is to spend time talking to God. Talking, listening, telling Hashem about your day, what happened. And I did the first time I said, give me a break. This is too weird. This is just too strange. Now, there are people who do Hitbodedut. They go into the field, or into a forest, literally, and they start screaming, and they start this visceral, trying to awaken something inside. That I didn't do that. I didn't feel like someone coming and shooting me. But I did sit there the first few weeks, probably said nothing, maybe just thought. I think about different things in my life, and things about people I know, and things I needed to do, and things I wasn't doing right. And after a while, I found myself talking. And very conscious of the fact that I'm near a bus stop, too. So that someone, he was on his phone, obviously. But sitting alone in the park, looking out that magnificent view, and just starting to talk to Hashem. And getting answers, by the way. That's its own topic. Much of what I talk about today can lead off into a whole bunch of other topics. But the idea of hearing the messages you hear from Hashem, and I talked about that before in various venues, and getting answers and starting to be more aware of Hashem, being more aware of Hashem's presence and Him being in my life, and starting to see things in a very different way. And I said, okay, after about a year of doing that, I said, I need something else. I need to do something else, because that's very good, but I need to add something to my repertoire. And I figured, you know what? Where is our main mifgash, or meeting point with Hashem? It's tefillah. Now, we all know that you can daven anywhere you want, as far as just opening up to God. Talk to Hashem anytime. I'm not talking about communal prayer, opening a siddur. I'm talking about just talking to Hashem. Daven to Hashem, pray to Hashem, ask Hashem, talk to Hashem. Hashem is available to you 24/7, 365. There's never a moment Hashem's not available to you. And I'm starting to understand this more and more. And I said, okay, tefillah. Maybe I should make a change. Now, I have had a tradition for many, many years. For any of you who've been in my home, you know I have a few Sfarim, but I have like a whole row, a shelf of Sidurim, because every year my custom was to buy a new Sidur. I had certain requirements I needed for a Sidur, but every year I got a new Sidur, Ashkenazi Sidur. And I said, you know what, we have in the shul, we have Ashkenazi Sidurim, we have Sfard, Nusach Sfard, which should not be confused with Sefaradi, and then we have Adot Mizrach / Sefaradi. If you had asked me 12, 15 years ago, I just bought one, a Sidur, I'd take one from the shelf. It has an aleph on it, Ashkenazi. Samach, Sfard. The hell was Ayin Mem? Sorry. Ayin Mem. Ayin Mem. What's that?
It's
Adot Mizrach. What is that? I don't know. It has some weird funky stuff in here. It has a hand, it has the menorah with words all over it. Words I don't even recognize. It's Hebrew, but what is it? I started to understand over time that it was just another nusach of tefillah. Basically, there's also Chabad, and there's a few others, but the basic three, besides Chabad, is Ashkenaz, Sfard, and Adot Mizrach, also known as Sefaradi. And within Sefaradi, there's a whole bunch of different permutations. Okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to take a look. I'll take a peek. So I was still davening here. I took it over to my stender, to my seat, and I opened it up, and I started to look at the opening words of the Siddur. In the beginning of the Siddur, many of the Sefaradi Siddurim are piyutim. Piyutim is poetry. But it's not poetry of like the Canterbury Tales. It's poetry, it's in Hebrew, that's understandable. It talks about the love of God. It talks about the connections. It talks about life. It talks about belief. There's so much, and honest to gosh, within a matter of a couple days, I was in love with those piyutim. That's all I thought I was going to do. Okay, I'll start my day. I'll read some of this piyutim. And I said, you know what, maybe the tefillah is also a little cooler. So I started looking at the tefillot. I said, this radical differences. It's the same general structure, more or less, but there's more feeling. Again, it would have taken me hours to explain the differences, but there's more feeling words, there's more connecting words, there's more love that you actually can see seeping out of the words in the Siddur. And I said, this is amazing. So what I did was I took that Siddur and I put it underneath my Ashkenazi Siddur for about 2 weeks. I was kind of like peeking at it and going back to the Ashkenazi. I said, okay, that's kind of creepy, right? So I said, okay, Higiyazman, I need to figure out what I'm going to do here. I need to understand, do I continue on my own just trying to make a decision to daven Adot Mizrach? Do I stay Ashkenazi with my tefillah and just say the piyutim? What am I going to do? I will tell you that, the Rambam says when it comes to in Hilchot Teshuvah, he says, by blowing shofar, people think it's a pasuk. It's not. It's a Rambam. It says, Ur yishenim mishenatchem, that we blow the shofar to awaken you sleepy people from your slumber. And I felt like I was awakening really for the very first time between the hitbodedut and the tefillah. And what I did was I started to supplant the hitbodedut with coming to shul earlier and saying the piyutim, because it was my own form of hitbodedut. In shul, I did hitbodedut with other people there, which is kind of a contradiction in terms, but that's okay. So I had a dilemma, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I knew to al titosh torah timecha. We can't just change And on the other hand, I said, wait, you know what? This is like really affecting me. These tefillot. So I went to Rav Aviner, and I started to discuss it with him. And he said, I need to think about it, whatever it was. And then I sent him an email. It's actually on my phone, but I'm using my phone right now to tape, so I can't read it to you. I'll tell you what it is. I sent him an email explaining the why. Why did I want to change? And one more thing. Talk about hashgacha pratit. Just in a by-the-by statement. Someone happened, in quotes, mentioned to me about a certain source they found about this, because I was talking to him about it. That's a Rav called the Maharam Shik, who made a psak. It says as follows. If you're faced with a dilemma, a fork in the road in your Judaism, you can want to do something that will bring you closer to God. But doing that, you're going to go against the idea of Al Titosh Tarati Mecha, that coming closer to God trumps the idea of Al Titosh Tarati Mecha, which means that if I wanted to do something, obviously that's halachically okay, and it will bring me closer to Hashem, even though it goes against my Mesorah, I'm allowed to do it. So I sent it to Rav Aviner. He responded to me the next day, and basically said, you can 100% rely on that. You could have, I was dancing. I was so excited. I was so happy, because it opened up this world for me at that moment, which I thought was just this new area of tefillah, that I could talk to Hashem in a different way. I could relate to God, and my spirituality was growing. And what I found it was starting to do for me also, after the Hitbodedut, in the beginning of this tefillah, it changed how I taught. It changed how I talked to people. It changed how I looked at people and understood and listened. It changed my perspective of life. There's something as silly as just missing a bus, like Baruch Hashem, I missed the bus. That was what it was meant to be. In many, many, many areas. To give you one example, years ago, while I was going through this, I was giving a shiur in my house about Rosh Hashanah. Right before Rosh Hashanah, I was giving this shiur, and one of my daughters was upstairs. I didn't know she was listening. And she sent me a message after the shiur was over. She said, I'm in tears. It was a beautiful shiur. I told her I could never have given that shiur 2 or 3 years earlier. My mind was in a different place. My heart was in a different place. My perspective was in a different place. And it truly, truly affected this whole metamorphosis, again, just for Tila and the Hitbodedut, who I was and what I was doing, how I was relating to people and to Hashem. Okay, so I said, look, im kvar I'm davening from the Ayin Men Sidur, the Adot Mizrach / Sefaradi Sidur, probably a good idea for me to daven in a Sefaradi shul. I don't know what goes on there. Well, I know they sacrifice a cow every morning, maybe. I don't know what's going on. I davened in Sefaradi. How green was I about the whole topic? When I came to visit, before we had Aliyah, I was in one of the Ashkenazi shuls. Now, there's a concept in different shuls in Israel, what's called dealer's choice. Now, whoever gets up to daven, that's the nusach. If he davens nusach Sfard, he davens nusach Sfard. If it's Adot Mizrach, he davens Adot Mizrach. I didn't know that. So to me, Ashkenaz and Sfard were the two nusachim or nuschaot that were used. Adot Mizrach was kind of out of the pale. So I asked the person that took me to shul that evening for Mincha, what do you do if someone gets up and davens Adot Mizrach? He says, what do you mean? I said, what do they do if the guy wants to daven? He says, I don't understand your question. He looked at me like I was from the moon. I was basically saying, what if someone wants to get up and be the chazan? Yeah, and? What do you mean? It was so foreign to me. The idea of davening Adot Mizrach. I knew there was Sefaradim here, and I didn't know the differences too much, but okay. We're talking like 12 years ago, 10 years, 11 years ago. So I figured, okay, I'm going to find a Sephardi shul to daven at. So right next door to us is the Moroccan shul, and I knew some people would daven there. I figured, okay, I'll start at least, because they only have minyan Friday night and Shabbat, I'm going to daven there. It was strange. It was okay, because I was expecting it to be a chazan, because I'm used to the structure of an Ashkenazi shul. It's a chazan, gets up for Kabbalat Shabbat, it's totally different. There is no chazan for that, only for Arvit. You sit for Kaddish, you don't stand for Kaddish. Lots of differences. I said, okay, that's Shabbat. Like, dude, there's 6 other days of the week. So there's a little shul up the hill that's building this monstrosity of a shul next door to it, right next door to Malot David. It's called Al Hagitit. That's the official name of the shul, by the way.
What's it called?
Al Hagitit. Yeah, that's the official name of the shul. And I figured I'll go there and try it out. Now I'm going to make a comment that I know some of you here will find more understandable than others. And whatever, I'll just say it. Over the years, I've dealt with people who have converted. And one of the things I hear is a repetitive statement early on is that the first time they walked, and it's not true for everybody, but the first time they walked into a synagogue, a temple, a shul, they felt at home. It's like something clicked. It was like, I belonged here. I didn't really obviously understand that because it's not something I could connect to until I started to go to that shul. When I was sitting there, at the beginning, it all made sense. It felt like I belonged. I'd done this before, probably in a different life, which is its own topic for maybe at the end. But it felt comfortable. I felt like, wow, this really does feel like I'm home. And I started to go on a regular basis to the Sefaradi shul, and I became a regular member, and I daven there every single day still, almost every single day. And at the beginning, I was tripping over my words. I felt like a Baal Tshuva. It was wonderful. I was saying Baruch Shamar, and I was saying Yishtabach, and I was saying other tefillot, things I've been saying my whole life, and suddenly the little nuances are different, the additional words, the less words here, the difference in the Chaf Sofit versus this one. And I was like, I had to slow down, and the whole pace of tefillah is different. It's slower, and then one person, like it's usually me in the morning, but says the whole thing out loud, and everyone follows along, and says it along quietly. And then I started to hit all these different milestones in the year. Now remember, I haven't yet in the story changed to become Sefaradi. It's only about tefillah. So I started hitting other milestones, like we come to Tisha B'Av. Okay, so I'm used to what we do by Ashkenazim. Well, the Sefaradim do is similar. It's a little bit different, but the main difference is that the kinot, the elegies that are said in the morning of sitting on the floor and the mournful dirges, that we say those also. But every single one of them ends on an up note. Every single one. There's something positive at the end of each one. There's certain singing that goes on that's an uplifting singing that goes on in the middle of those as well. They read also Sefer Iyov in the morning. It's just too long for me. So there was Tisha B'Av. The next major step for me was going to be, we're coming on Elul. For those of you who don't know, Ashkenazim say Slichot for about 10 days before, about 12 days, from before Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur. It's more than that, actually. And Sefaradim say it for 40 days, starting the second day of Elul. And I said, Slichot, for the most part, unfortunately, for most people, is words they can't understand, mumbled at the speed of light, just to be said. I said, wait a minute, and how long do your Sephardi Slichot take? Oh, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. I said, are you kidding me? And for 40 days? Yeah, but we don't say them on Shabbat. Now, I had no clue or concept of what the Sephardi Slichot were. I'd never heard them. Till I first started going to the Sephardi Slichot. The tunes are haunting. Beautiful melodies. You can actually feel Hashem's presence when you start hearing Ben Adam Alecha Nirdam, and you hear that, which is meaning that first opening line every single day, which means is Ben Adam, human being. Like, why are you asleep? Time to wake up and serve Hashem. As soon as I heard that, and it's the exact same slichot every single day, and they're Hebrew, and they're understandable, and the tunes, and it's where people all, there's, in a Sephardi davening, and in a Sephardi slichot, there's zero downtime. There's no time where everyone's just quietly saying something except Shemona Esrei. That's about it. Always there's something happening. There's also a lot more sitting, and like Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is, which I'll get to in a minute, is almost all sitting. There's no up and down, open the ark, close the ark, open the ark, close the ark, sit down, up, down. None of that at all. Shachris is very long, and Musaf is 1 hour for Sefaradim on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur on Rosh Hashanah. So I came to these. Now, what about Havdalah and Kiddush? They're different. Havdalah, I didn't know there's a Sephardi Havdalah. There's a Sephardi Havdalah. What do I know? So I started looking into that, and finally I got to the point. I got to Rosh Hashanah, I got to Yom Kippur, and I'm going to make a statement that I know people find offensive, but I'm going to say it anyways because I don't care. I don't mean it to be offensive. I davened for 50 years, let's say, Ashkenazi. In my first year, that was at the Moroccan shul for Rosh Hashanah, and the tunes, again, they're very uplifting and a tremendous amount of feeling and everything. I walked out of the shul, and they were still davening here. It was middle of Musaf, and I'm listening to the tune, which right now, if you told me to get up and daven for the Yamad right now for Rosh Hashanah Kippur, no problem. I still know all the tunes and all that. And I said, oh my gosh, it sounds like they're waiting for the next pogrom. That's what it sounded like to me. And over there, it's like it's alive, it's life, it's let's get closer to Hashem. And I know we screwed up, we did things wrong, but look at what we... It's a totally different feeling. And I said, okay, I have gotten to a point where something needs to give here. All I'm doing is little bits and little bits. I'm getting, like, entering more and crossing that line. I started with Rav Aviner and said we're going to do the davening thing and all, but something else is going on here. I did the davening thing, I did the slichot thing, I started with the Havdalah thing. I said, where's the big change going to come? It's going to come with tefillin. Ashkenazi and Sefaradi put them on differently, and also the writing inside is potentially different. There's certain ones that are the same writing inside, but the way they're actually put on physically is different. So I called Rav Rabinovich. Shlita. You should have refuah shleima. And I told him what's been going on for the last year. And I said to him the following. I said, I know it's not like changing your eyes from blue to green. I don't know if you could just... He stopped me. He says, what are you talking about? You're already Sefaradi. Of course you're Sefaradi. Once again, it was giddy. I was so happy he said that to me. So he basically said, you need to change your tefillin, you need to change your minhagim, there's a whole bunch of things I needed to do. As far as the family, I'll come back to that. So the first thing I wanted to do was, of course, look into my tefillin. So the first thing I did was I had a sofer check them out, and it turns out, thank God, that the tefillin I have, that the writing was good enough for both Ashkenazim and Sefaradim. Great! Didn't have to spend money on new pair of tefillin. But once again, I felt like about tshuva. Why? Because I had to learn to put tefillin on. What does that mean? By Ashkenazim, the halacha is you put them on standing up, and a bracha on the shal yad, a bracha on the shal rosh. Sefaradim, you make a bracha sitting down on the shal yad, you stand up, put on the shal rosh, no bracha, and you wrap it differently.